Emotion is loud, wisdom is quiet. A short sentence, yet powerful enough to ring like a wake-up call in today's chaotic world of emotions. Once, Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, wrote in Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The wise don't need to argue much about what is right. They live it. They are silent yet profound, calm yet unwavering. In contrast, emotions, when undisciplined, are often loud, intense, and impulsive. They demand attention and crave to be seen, heard, and reacted to immediately. Wisdom, on the other hand, chooses to step back, observe, understand, and patiently wait for the right moment. We often mistake silence for weakness, but sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who understands exactly what's going on. They don't need to show off because true inner strength doesn't need noise to prove itself. This video will guide you deeper into these two opposing forces, emotion and wisdom, and how Stoicism shows the path to rise above emotion, to live with clarity and strength from within. Action always speaks louder than words, but only when you know where to look and how to listen will you realize that true wisdom never has to shout to be heard. Number 1. The meaning of emotion is loud. Emotion is an essential part of being human. It makes us tremble, love, fear, rage, and rejoice. But for that very reason, emotion is also volatile, contagious, and at times, it overwhelms reason. Emotion is loud isn't just a vivid phrase. It's a sharp warning. Emotion, when left unchecked, will always find a way to scream and seize control of us. When emotion speaks, it rarely whispers. It shouts. It demands immediate action. A person in anger may say things that deeply wound a loved one, smash things of great value, or even destroy relationships built over years. In those moments, reason fades, barely getting a word in. We don't think, we react. Imagine a peaceful evening in a small family. Dinner has just been served, the kids are playing quietly, and the atmosphere seems warm and gentle. But then, from just a seemingly harmless remark, maybe a light criticism or a reminder of something in the past, emotions start to stir. A flicker of irritation appears in the eyes. Responses grow sharper. Then comes the first raised voice like a spark catching on long-dried tinder. At that moment, reason still whispers, "Stay calm. Don't let this go too far." But the shout of a wounded ego drowns everything out. Everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to be heard, yet no one listens. What started as a conversation turns into a confrontation. Harsh words are spoken like knives that can't be taken back. And the next morning, when the anger has faded, they sit in silence across from each other. Not because the love is gone, but because they don't know how to begin again. That is the tragedy of unchecked emotions and forgotten reason. That is the price of letting emotion take the wheel. Emotion doesn't see the long road ahead. It lives in the now. It craves immediate release. Reason, on the other hand, is patient. It observes, evaluates, and weighs consequences. But in a storm of rage or despair, who is clear-headed enough to invite reason in? The Stoics understood this well. They didn't deny emotion. They simply refused to be ruled by it. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This quote isn't a call for indifference. Quite the opposite. It affirms the greatest power a human possesses, the power to choose their reaction. When someone treats you badly, you can respond with anger, or you can respond with calm and reason. A Stoic chooses the latter not because they don't feel hurt, but because they know emotions are fleeting, while the consequences of our reactions last. Those who are driven by emotion often don't realize they've become slaves to it. They believe they're being bold, standing their ground. But in truth, they're out of control, letting an ever-shifting emotional tide steer them toward decisions they'll regret. Emotion is loud is a reminder not to confuse emotional expression with authenticity. Speaking your mind doesn't always mean being true to yourself. Sometimes, silence and self-restraint are the clearest signs of someone who truly understands themselves. And it's in those moments when we most want to scream that we most need to be still, not to suppress what we feel, but to listen to reason, to consequences, and most importantly, to the person we're striving to become. Number 2, the meaning of wisdom is quiet. In an age where the loudest voice is often the one most heard, wisdom chooses a different path: quiet, composed, and humble. In Stoic philosophy, wisdom is not about flaunting knowledge or reacting fiercely to life's chaos. Wisdom is the ability to stay calm in the midst of disorder, the inner strength to resist being pulled by impulsive emotions, and the kind of deep understanding that doesn't need to prove itself. According to the Stoic philosophers, a wise person is not swayed by circumstances, nor driven by the need to show off. They live by reason, seek inner control, and act in alignment with natural principles. Wisdom doesn't need noise. It doesn't need to win every argument. It only needs to be right in action. As Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." This may sound counterintuitive, but it reflects the core of Stoic wisdom, the surrender of ego. Truly wise people don't need others to acknowledge their intellect. They care more about becoming a better person than being praised as one. When Socrates was sentenced to death by the very city he had devoted his life to, Athens, for corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods, he could have fought back. With his influence, a single call for help could have rallied hundreds to his side. But Socrates didn't choose that path. He wasn't angry, he didn't beg, and he didn't renounce his teachings. Instead, he entered the courtroom with astonishing composure, speaking with sharp reason and quiet humility. When the verdict was delivered, Socrates didn't resist, didn't complain, and didn't try to escape, as many had expected. He didn't flail in emotional turmoil or choose the easy way out to save his life. Instead, he chose to stay calmly facing death as a natural part of life, as the final chapter in his pursuit of truth. In his final days, he continued doing what he had done his entire life, engaging in dialogue. He spoke with his students about life, the soul, virtue, and death, not with sorrow, but with clarity and composure. He didn't need an emotional outburst to prove anything. It was his silence and calm that revealed the depth of his intellect most clearly. Socrates' silence was not surrender. It was the pinnacle of self-mastery and understanding. He lived by his ideal, not to be praised, but to live rightly. And it was that quiet resolve, free of fanfare or spectacle, that echoed through the centuries, making him an enduring symbol of wisdom and inner freedom. The silence in wisdom is not indifference. On the contrary, it is observation, deep listening, and a deliberate choice of response. Wisdom is never rushed. It knows emotions can flare up like fire, but also fade just as quickly. But wisdom, when nurtured properly, is like an underground stream, quiet, enduring, and profound. In life, the wisest person is not necessarily the first to speak. They are often the quietest, but when they do speak, everyone listens. So when you step into a conversation, a conflict, or a moment of inner turmoil, let wisdom lead. Don't let instincts take over. Don't let emotion overpower reason, because wisdom, in truth, doesn't need to shout to be known. It only needs to show up at the right moment, in the right way, and be strong enough to change your life. Now, having understood why wisdom chooses stillness over noise, let's go deeper into one of the greatest human challenges. How do we balance emotion and intellect? This is not just an art of living, it is the foundation for becoming the strongest, most self-possessed version of ourselves. Number 3, the balance between emotion and intelligence. Within every person, there are two currents at play. One is the stormy, intense, and unpredictable flow of emotion. The other is the quiet, profound, and disciplined current of reason. What matters is not to eliminate emotion altogether, but to learn how to let reason lead and guide our emotions. That is the core lesson Stoic philosophy seeks to teach, and it is the key that unlocks the door to inner peace. A Stoic does not deny emotion. They feel, but they do not get swept away, because they understand that a hasty reaction is merely the mark of a mind that hasn't been trained. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When emotion leads the way, people are more likely to make impulsive decisions, say hurtful things, or take actions they later regret. Imagine a simple situation. You receive a harsh, critical message from a colleague. If you let emotion take the wheel, you might immediately respond with an angry reply or vent your frustration to someone else. But if you pause, take a deep breath, and let reason speak first, you might choose silence, reflect on the cause, or even steer the conversation toward understanding instead of confrontation. In that moment, you're not weak, you're stronger than ever. Stoicism doesn't ask us to become cold or unfeeling. On the contrary, it teaches us to recognize our emotions, to observe them, and to respond from a place of strength of reason, of values, of personal discipline. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. It's a daily practice shaped by small choices, by each moment we resist an impulse and respond with thought. That's when reason quietly does its work, without needing praise, without noise. In today's world, where emotions are constantly triggered by social media, news, and endless comparisons, staying mentally clear and emotionally steady has become a critical life skill. Just a few seconds of scrolling can pull us into a spiral of envy, anger, or anxiety. Every status update, every photo, and every headline has the power to stir our emotions. In such a noisy world, the ones who can keep their minds calm are the ones with true inner strength. Wisdom doesn't shout. It speaks in whispers during the moments we pause, take a deep breath, and look inward. But to hear that whisper, we must be awake. We must train ourselves not to react impulsively and not to let emotions run every decision. Once we begin to hear the voice of wisdom, we live differently. We stop getting swept away by what's happening around us. We become more at peace, more in control, and more grounded, just as a true practitioner of Stoicism would. The balance between emotion and reason isn't something we achieve once and for all. It's a journey. There will be days when we slip, when emotion gets the better of us. But Stoicism teaches us not to blame ourselves. Observe, learn, and begin again with patience and discipline. Every time we choose reason over a reckless emotional reaction, we are building ourselves into someone stronger. So what about you? In your daily life, have there been moments when you chose reason over emotion? How did that change something within you? Share your experience in the comments. Who knows? Your honest story might inspire someone else who's struggling to find their way. Number 4. The benefits of controlling emotions. In 2008, when the global financial market plunged into crisis, a man named Ray Dalio, founder of the investment fund Bridgewater Associates, faced the risk of losing billions of dollars. It wasn't just an economic challenge. It was an emotional test. Instead of panicking, blaming others, or reacting impulsively like the majority, Dalio chose to take a step back. He observed. He noted everything that was happening with a rare sense of calm. He didn't deny his emotions because he knew emotions are part of being human, but he didn't let them take the wheel. He let reason lead and let principles guide his actions. And the result? His fund not only survived the financial storm, but emerged even stronger after the crisis. In his book Principles, Dalio wrote, "If you don't control your emotions, you can't control anything." That quote rings true, not just in investing, but in life. Emotional control isn't about suppression. It's about understanding and choosing to respond with reason. That is the spirit of Stoicism, staying grounded in the middle of the storm. That story is a vivid illustration of an ancient truth long upheld by Stoic philosophy. Mastering your emotions is the gateway to letting your intellect lead. Emotions aren't the enemy, but when left unchecked, they become waves that drown out reason. And when reason is silenced, clarity vanishes. Psychologically, emotional control helps people live with greater stability, less shaken by life's disruptions. A calm mind is not an empty mind, it is an ordered one. We can't avoid negative emotions such as anger, anxiety, and envy, but we can learn to observe them without getting swept away. Socially, we've all seen how a debate can spiral into conflict because of one unchecked comment. Emotions that flare up before reflection often divide. In contrast, those who restrain their words and reactions become peace builders, people who can listen while others are shouting. To the outside world, they may seem composed, but through the lens of Stoicism, they are people acting with wisdom, something that doesn't need to be loud to be recognized. In the workplace, the ability to manage emotions is the foundation of lasting success. A leader can't rely solely on expertise. They must also be able to keep a cool head under intense pressure. True intelligence isn't reacting fast, it's reacting right. And right reactions only come when emotions are filtered through reason. Looking deeper, emotional control can also be seen as an act of honoring the divine. Humans are called to live with humility, patience, and love qualities that can't exist when emotions run wild and unchecked. The silence of wisdom is not coldness, but a readiness to hear what's right, whether it comes from conscience or from God. Ultimately, when you learn not to react on impulse but instead respond with wisdom, you are taking one step closer to inner freedom, the very thing every Stoic philosopher sought. Number 5. The role of equanimity in life. In today's fast-paced world, where everything moves so quickly that people are constantly pushed into stress and knee-jerk reactions, calmness has become a rare kind of strength. It's not indifference or escapism, but the ability to keep the mind steady in the midst of chaos, a core quality of wisdom in the spirit of Stoicism. Equanimity, or the state of inner balance and composure, doesn't just help us avoid emotional overreaction. It lays the foundation for clear thinking and decisive action. Stoicism teaches us this: we don't control the world, but we always control how we respond to it. When you clearly understand the boundary between what you can control and what you can't, you stop being dragged into the spiral of anger, anxiety, or disappointment, those loud, energy-draining emotions. Equanimity, in Stoicism, is not a passive state. It's a conscious, active choice of how to live, a clear-headed decision made by someone who understands that life is always changing, and that the only thing they truly own is their mind. When we accept what cannot be changed, when we stop trying to control what's beyond our reach, that's when wisdom begins to speak, not through words, but through inner stillness, calm actions, and clarity in choices. Let me tell you a story about James, a manager at a major tech company. One morning, the company's core product system crashed, affecting millions of users. The team spiraled into panic. Department heads argued and pointed fingers, and employees had no idea where to begin. But James, a man known for being quiet, remained calm. He didn't raise his voice or issue dramatic commands. He walked into the room, listened, observed, then clearly laid out the next steps briefly, decisively, without a trace of negative emotion. Within hours, the crisis was under control. Not because he was a tech genius, but because he had a strong inner core. James understood that worry, panic, or anger wouldn't fix the system, but a calm mind could. James's story shows that in the most chaotic moments, it's the calmest person who leads the way. Emotions may push us to act, but if that action is driven by impulse, it's just a reaction. Wisdom, on the other hand, requires stillness because it doesn't react, it chooses. Equanimity doesn't make us cold or emotionless. It makes us more effective, more resilient, and above all, more free. Free from being controlled by circumstances, free from the noise of the outside world, and free from the chaos within our own minds. You don't need to shout to prove you're strong. You just need to stand still and let your calm speak for you. If you've ever experienced a moment where staying calm helped you overcome a challenge, share it in the comments. Or, if you're learning how to become more composed in your life, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a message. Who knows? It might be the spark that inspires someone else. Number 6. Practicing Stoic philosophy in everyday life. How can we stay calm in the middle of the emotional storms we face every day? How do we avoid being swept away by other people's anger, anxiety, or fluctuating expectations? These aren't just philosophical questions. They're real challenges we all face at work, at home, and in the most vulnerable corners of our relationships. Stoicism isn't just a philosophy meant to be read in old books. It's an art of living, a way to be fully present in each moment without losing ourselves. And to do that, daily practice is essential. Like forging a sword, without fire, without a hammer, without patience, there can be no inner strength. One of the simplest ways to start is by writing a Stoic journal each morning or evening. You don't need to write much. Just a few lines of honest reflection. What made me lose control today? Did I react? Or did I choose how to respond? The point of writing is not to vent, but to observe yourself from a distance. That distance is the space of reason, where wisdom grows and emotions become illuminated. Meditation doesn't have to mean sitting cross-legged in total silence. It can be a few minutes each morning spent imagining the worst that could happen. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. When you visualize loss, failure, or discomfort in advance, you reduce their power when they actually arrive. When bad thing happens, you're not shocked. When it doesn't, you're more grateful for what you have. These practices aren't meant to make you numb or unfeeling. On the contrary, they help you gain emotional self-control, not by suppressing your emotions, but by understanding them. You begin to realize that your emotions are not you. They come and go. You don't need to act on them immediately. Between the anger and the reaction, there's a pause, and Stoicism teaches you to live in that pause. To picture it more clearly, imagine a day in the life of Epictetus, a philosopher who was once a slave. Life didn't give him much control over the outside world, but he mastered the one thing that truly mattered, himself. In the morning, he woke up asking, "What will I face today? A rude person, an injustice, an unexpected accident?" But he didn't complain. He prepared his mind like a warrior putting on armor. When insulted in public, he didn't respond with anger because he knew the insult couldn't touch his dignity unless he allowed it to. By midday, after waiting hours just to be served, he used the moment to observe himself. Am I feeling frustrated? That means I'm still dependent on external. That's okay. Let's use this as a chance to train my patience. At night, he wrote in his journal, "Where did I fail today? What did I overcome? And tomorrow, can I do better?" Those lines weren't for judgment, but for growth. And that's exactly what we can do even in the 21st century. You don't have to live like a hermit. Just take a few minutes each day to observe yourself, to stay silent when emotions rise, to slow down so wisdom can speak. Because in the end, wisdom never needs to shout. You only need to listen. And that begins with the smallest practices, repeated until they become who you are. Number 7. Dealing with negative emotions. No one is immune to negative emotions. Whether you're a beggar or an emperor like Marcus Aurelius, anger, sadness, and anxiety, they're all natural parts of being human. But what truly defines us is how we face and respond to these emotions. Negative emotions don't just hurt, they blind us. In anger, we say things we shouldn't. When we're sad, we withdraw, avoid others, and lose connection. Anxiety makes us overestimate danger and shrink back from even valuable opportunities. These emotional states, when not examined through reason, can easily drive our lives off course. The Stoics never tried to eliminate emotions because that's impossible. Instead, they learned to observe, recognize, and transform them. Epictetus once wrote, "The wise man is indifferent to things not under his control." Emotions are one of those things. They come and go like waves. What matters is whether you let them sweep you away or stand firm like a rock in the storm. So how do we stay steady? First, recognize the emotion as it arises. Don't react just yet. Name it. I am angry. I am sad. Naming your emotion gives you distance just enough to separate yourself from that first impulsive reaction. Next, accept it as a natural phenomenon. Don't feel ashamed for being angry. Don't force yourself to feel happy. The Stoics didn't deny emotion. They simply refused to let it control their actions. Then, ask yourself, what can I do right now that reflects my values? That question becomes the bridge between emotion and wisdom, where the emotion is felt, but reason makes the choice. Imagine you're being publicly insulted right in front of a crowd, with all eyes on you. The instinctive reaction most of us have is to strike back immediately, raise our voice, defend our pride, assert our dominance. We want to prove we're not weak, that we won't be disrespected. But in that moment, someone who lives by the Stoic mindset does the opposite. They pause. They feel the anger. They don't deny it, but they refuse to let it take control. They understand that anger is a reaction, while calm is a choice. Instead of lashing out, they might choose to stay silent or walk away with conviction. Or if they do speak, they'll use a steady, not bitter, and never adding fuel to the fire. Because they know winning an argument is often just a victory for the ego, not for character. And the ego is always hungry, always chasing a fight. The wise don't need to be better than others. They only aim to be better than the person they were yesterday. That is the power of stillness. A stillness that isn't weakness but strength. A stillness that doesn't come from running away, but from taking control. Stoicism teaches us that every negative emotion holds a lesson about ourselves, about what we value, and about how mature we are. When you learn to sit with your emotion without being swallowed by it, you're training a mind stronger than any outburst could ever be. And in the moment when you don't react but choose to observe, you become the embodiment of the quiet wisdom for which Stoicism stands. But how do we maintain that clarity every day? How do we stay centered when life outside is chaos? The answer lies in the final piece, a habit at the very heart of Stoic practice: reflection and self-examination. This is the deepest foundation for keeping the silence of wisdom amid the noise of emotion. Number 8. The importance of thinking and self-reflection. In a world where mental noise rarely quiets down, the ability to pause, think, and reflect has become almost revolutionary. Stoicism doesn't promote suppressing emotions. It guides us to observe, understand, and consciously regulate them. At the heart of that journey lies deep thinking and self-reflection. This isn't just a way to accumulate wisdom. It's the only path to a meaningful life, rather than drifting aimlessly through the days. Wisdom doesn't arise from silence alone, but from the ability to truly listen to ourselves within that silence. Thinking and reflecting allow us to peel back the layers of fleeting emotions to reach the core of our actions, motivations, and beliefs. If emotions are immediate reactions, then reflection is the process of looking back and understanding why we reacted that way. And from that insight, we begin to grow, to live differently next time, better and more grounded. One of the most powerful tools left by Stoic philosophy is the habit of reviewing the day. Every night before sleep, Stoics like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius would take time to ask themselves, what did I do well today? Where did I fall short? Did I act in alignment with the values I believe in? This wasn't self-blame or guilt. It was an honest conversation with oneself, in silence, without witnesses, without the need for applause. And at that very moment, wisdom took shape. Imagine someone who has just gone through a tense argument with a colleague. The emotions in that moment might be anger, frustration, or even hurt. The outbursts, the harsh words, they all come from a deep place within, a wounded ego, challenged pride, a rising need to be right and to be acknowledged. But in the evening, when the noise has faded, this person chooses to sit in silence, not to forget but to understand. He asks himself, why did I react that way? What word struck a nerve? Did that reaction come from reason or from the ego's unconscious need to defend itself? And deeper still, did my actions today reflect the person I truly want to be: calm, fair, and in control? At that moment, no one sees, no applause, but it's in that very moment that wisdom speaks without noise. without the need to win. All it takes is a person brave enough to face themselves and choose to grow. In that sequence of questions, something remarkable happens. That person is no longer a victim of emotion. They become the observer and eventually the navigator of their feelings. They begin to see what needs to change and what must be let go. And the next day, when a similar situation arises, they carry with them a little more calm, a little more intention, and wisdom starts to bloom. Self-reflection doesn't require you to retreat to mountain tops or temples. It only asks for a few quiet minutes each day to ask yourself, did I live well today? You might not have the answer right away, but the moment you ask, you've already begun to change. Stoic philosophy reminds us that wisdom is not some mystical thing. It's the outcome of steady, silent practice. Emotions may shout, but wisdom whispers. Only when you are quiet enough to hear it can you step out of the loop of reaction and into the space of choice where you are in control of yourself. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So think clearly, live truthfully, reflect regularly. Let the colors of your soul become those of clarity, peace, and inner strength. Emotions are loud. They're angry and impatient and crave immediate satisfaction. But wisdom is quiet. It observes, it waits, and it leads us to self-control. In this video, we explored the contrast between emotion and wisdom. We learned that silence is not weakness, but a sign of inner strength, and that the wise don't need to speak much. They show it through their actions, through the way they live. What about you? When do you feel your wisdom speaks the loudest in silence? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to read and respond. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like it, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. And if you're ready to keep training your mind in the spirit of Stoicism, click the video at the end of this screen. Thank you for being here. Stay grounded in silence. That's where wisdom speaks.